There are a lot of reasons why Tales of Berseria is a great game. I made an entire video about it. You should check it out. One of the biggest reasons, though, is the character writing and themes, and the biggest part of that is the main protagonist of the game, Velvet Crowe. A protagonist who is the antithesis of most other video game protagonists. A self-described monster, a harbinger of wickedness, a woman ruthlessly pursuing revenge at all possible costs, devoted to destroying the man hailed as a hero and savior for humanity. This is the hero Tales of Berseria gives us, and she is an incredibly good character. This video will be structured in a similar way to my video about Estelle Bright, starting with a summary of the journey of the game, talking about significant themes and events, and transitioning into a discussion of Velvet's relationships with other characters, both personal and narrative. As is the case for many characters driven to go on roaring rampages of revenge, Velvet did not start out this way. Once upon a time, she was a caring young woman from the village of Abal, a part of the Holy Midgand Empire. She lived in the village with her sickly younger brother Laphicet, older sister Celica, and her older sister's husband Artorius, aka Arthur, until the Scarlet Night. In this world, there's a phenomenon called the Scarlet Night, where the moon and the landscape are bathed in an eerie red glow and monsters appear. Tragedy befell the small family when on a Scarlet Night, Celica perished along with her unborn child. At the same time, a new being appeared in the world called Malaks, spiritual beings that can be used by some as basically familiars. Also, the monsters started appearing outside of the Scarlet Night. 3 years after Celica's death, Velvet has grown up trained by Arthur in combat and is doing her best to help keep the family together as Laphicet's illness grows worse. Then, another Scarlet Night happens, and on this one, Velvet goes out after Laphicet and Arthur go missing. She arrives in time to see Arthur kill Laphicet in a ritual, and Velvet's attempt to prevent the event leads to Arthur cutting off her arm and having it replaced by a demonic claw. In her rage and grief, she slaughters all the demons that have appeared around the town. After successfully ridding the town of them, she is horrified when Artorius reveals that they were not demons at all, but the townspeople, including her best friend Nico. This night is the Advent, meaning that Malaks can be seen by everyone, not just those like Artorius who were sensitive before. Velvet is then thrown into a cell on the prison island Titania, and they toss demons down for her to devour with her claw, since she no longer needs sustenance herself, just the ever-hungry claw. This is her life for 3 years before her escape happens. The beginning of Velvet's story makes it very clear how the events that precede the main part of the game warped Velvet. The once caring woman is left as a vessel devoid of anything but rage and hate for Artorius, and also for the monster she has become. Unsurprisingly, Velvet, with the help of Artorius' Malak Ceres, and 2 new friends in Rokurow and Magilu, escape from Titania. During this escape, Velvet has her first confrontation with the religious organization now controlled by Artorius called the Abbey. She confronts Oscar, a praetor exorcist of the Abbey, during her escape attempt. Their discussion before battle also begins the main thematic battle of the game: reason versus emotion. Before that can be explored more, though, don't worry, there will be plenty to go through later, a Malak controlled by Oscar transforms into a dragon and loses control, knocking away Oscar and trying to get to Velvet. Ceres intervenes, saving Velvet at the cost of her own life, and convinces Velvet to devour her to gain her power. It is during this moment that Velvet discovers that Ceres is Celica, or rather the reincarnation of her. As if Velvet needed more family angst in her life, Velvet destroys the dragon, absorbs it, and then defeats Oscar, declaring her name, her intention, and that she is, indeed, a monster, specifically a Therian. Velvet then makes her escape along with Rokurow and Magilu, but since none of them actually know how to steer or run a ship, they end up crashing into the Figel ice caps near the city of Helavis. Luckily, they are saved by a strange boy who seems very interested in the compass Velvet has, much like Laphicet before. Unluckily, their landing spot is in a region heavily controlled by the Abbey, but being a JRPG group, they need to sneak into the city anyway. It is here they encounter Teresa, Oscar's sister and fellow praetor exorcist of the Abbey, along with her 2 Malak. one of whom is the boy from earlier that saved the party with healing magic that Teresa refers to as number 2. Velvet doesn't have time to worry about that though, and endeavors to find someone to repair her ship to get away from Helives, but the guild won't do it unless she takes care of a demon named Dial for them first. Dial is hiding out in a village that rejects the Abbey and thus receives none of the Abbey's aid against the demons. On her way to dealing with that, Velvet encounters another praetor named Eleanor Hume, albeit an unorthodox one who has decided to help the village and other heretic areas regardless of their beliefs. However, she repeats the dogma of the Abbey's perfect logic and principle to justify their actions in abandoning the villages in the first place. When Velvet calls her out on it, she gets flustered. This isn't the last we'll see of her, and the continued debate of reason versus emotion. Velvet and Rokurou then proceed onward, Maggie Lou having skipped out long before this in search of someone, and locate, fight, and defeat Dial. He is spared though when he reveals his desire for revenge against the guild for betraying him, a feeling Velvet can relate to. Once they arrive back in Helives, the Escape Plan Part 2 Ice Edition begins. Magulu has gotten captured by Teresa, and Teresa uses the new information revealed about Velvet to try and capture Velvet and Rokurou. A distraction was planned though in the form of an explosion elsewhere in the city, allowing Velvet to knock down Teresa and escape towards the now burning harbor. Dial is there waiting with the ship, but before they can board, Teresa catches up and confronts them. Velvet uses a brief moment of weakness to try and strike down Teresa for good, but Eleanor arrives and blocks the attack. They manage to escape then with the capture of the Moloch number 2 as Velvet threatens him to use his power or she will eat him. A threat that will be used quite often by Velvet as the game goes on, with varying levels of seriousness. Their journey doesn't exactly start out that well, since soon after leaving Helives they have Ifrit's pirates on their tail. They manage to evade them long enough to get to land, where they confront the pirates and their first mate Eisen, a Moloch who calls himself the Reaper. After a battle, Eisen then asks for them to join him, and warns them about the naval fortress they were heading into. Velvet and Eisen decide to join forces to get themselves through the fortress. During their infiltration, Rokurou confronts Velvet about naming number 2, and eventually she gives him a name, albeit inadvertently in a moment of panic. She shows in that moment a difference between her and the exorcists who use the Malachim as tools rather than as individuals. Velvet understandably doesn't want to get close to anyone given the track record of people dying around her, but she can't suppress her caring instincts entirely. She names him Laphicet, or Fee for short. With that, they continue on their journey now, aided by Eisen and the party and the ship Van Eltia and its crew in support of their efforts. They are now ready to move towards the capital and the confrontation with Artorius. The most notable aspect for Velvet's character in this section is a continued warming of her to the party in general and the realization of the peace many people living under the Abbey's influence enjoy. Oh, and of course the iconic dove scene, which is clearly the real reason she is a great character. Once Velvet and crew get into the palace, it's now time for the big confrontation. With Eleanor, of course. If it wasn't apparent already that she was a reflection in contrast with Velvet, I think it is now. The battle seems to be going in Eleanor's favor, but with the help of Magilou taking Eleanor's Malak Bienfu, and Velvet killing the rest of her Malaks, the party defeats Eleanor, leaving her powerless. The path is now open to Artorius. Well, after they get Zavid's help to get past the barrier. As Velvet gets closer to Artorius though, her callous coldness rears its head again, likely as she is reminded of the man responsible for all her pain and suffering. Her revenge is near. But unfortunately for Velvet, Artorius is ready and handily defeats her. In the battle of reason and emotion, reason triumphs. Well, reason and a supremely powerful Malak named Innominat. That, plus the arrival of the Praetors and Legate Melchior, means this attempt on Artorius' life will end in failure. Not before Laphicet, who has been gaining more and more individuality since being named, asks the critical question of Velvet, why do you go on fighting? That question is what Velvet will tackle throughout the rest of the game, starting when they escape into a portal to an Earth Pulse. However, they've got an unwelcome guest in Eleanor. There, Velvet fights for Laphicet's survival, making a deal with Eleanor that saves Laphicet's life by binding him with Eleanor as someone pure of soul. They then get transported out of the Earth Pulse, meeting up with the rest of the party, and as per the agreement, Eleanor joins the party, as a spy ordered by the Abbey, which Velvet is fully aware of. While the plot veers away from Velvet's thirst for revenge, her character development continues, especially with Eleanor now as a foil to develop off of. In a way, Velvet talking to Eleanor is a way of confronting her old self and reflects a humanity that Velvet thought she had lost. Along the way, she helps her fellow party members through their personal struggles, Crowe trying to overcome his older brother, Eisen trying to find Eifried, and Laphicet trying to find his purpose. Her one-woman journey of revenge has broadened, and soon it will broaden even more as she learns more about Artorius' ultimate goals. With the assistance of a Malic friend of Magilou's, Grimoire, they discover Artorius' plan to fully revive Innominat with the help of the Therians, of which Velvet is one of. The Therians function as Innominat's mouths, feeding him until he can awaken to his full power. This starts the next journey for Velvet to take away the Therians from the Earth Pulses that they need to be in to transfer the malevolence they consume to Innominat. This means that the whole time she was in prison, Velvet was feeding Innominat when they tossed down demons for her. Just another thing to add to Velvet's long list of things she blames herself for. However, the rescuing of the Therians and Velvet's growing connection with everyone in the party starts to bring out her fierce protective side. She finally has a reason to go on that's not to kill. It's to protect. With this additional reason, Velvet's rationale for destroying Artorius is called into question in a couple key moments, starting with her return to a ball, her hometown where she slew all its residents on the fateful day. Or so she thought. Upon her arrival, she discovers her best friend Nico still alive and the village well and thriving. Not only that, but Laphicet is still alive, in a coma. With this discovery, Velvet softens. As she talks to the villagers and interacts with the party, she begins to seem at peace. She can turn away from her previously chosen path and become the woman she was before. Unfortunately, it is all an illusion, as the rest of the party suspected, and Velvet eventually realizes, which is another emotional dagger into her heart. As Magilou says, people can fight against pain, with the unfinished part of the sentence being, but they don't want to fight against happiness. Velvet wanted so badly for things to be alright that she couldn't help but fall for the trap. Devastating as it is, this event reveals that Velvet hasn't totally lost the caring person she once was, and that the progress she has made to regain that self is real. It's not going to be an easy journey from here on out, but it's another important step to overcoming her traumatic past. While in a ball, the group is able to recover a copy of the Book of Innominat with all the pages so they can get the full picture of the plan. Before that can be translated, though, the Abbey has different plans and puts into place a new weapon, an unstable art to be used by Oscar. Knowing the dangers to her brother, Teresa asks for Velvet's aid. She will agree to help them if they spare Oscar. Things don't exactly go to plan, though, once they confront Oscar, with Teresa fusing with the Therian, and Oscar still completing aromatization by fusing with his Malak. Ultimately, in order to protect everyone, Velvet kills Oscar, leading Teresa to immediately attack Velvet. I'm sure the symbolism of Velvet killing Teresa's brother in front of his sister, and Teresa immediately seeking revenge, is not lost on anyone. At no point previously has Velvet seemed so confused and remorseful for her actions, because she knows exactly how Teresa feels. In her anguish, when Teresa attacks Velvet, she fights back and kills Teresa, taking out one of the Therians they had been trying to save. The dream sequence that follows after Velvet collapses from this hammers home Velvet's inner conflict. She's the same as Artorius, but she had to do it for Laphicet. Everything was for Laphicet. The crew gets wind of an exorcist attack on their base on the prison island to take back the Therian stashed there, and they hurry to confront them. After fighting their way past exorcists, also using aromatization, they rescue the Therians and send them on the ship. But before they can leave, they are confronted by more exorcists, and then finally, Artorius and Rokuro's brother Shigure. As Velvet prepares for another chance at Artorius, he pulls out a surprise. Innominat is already powerful enough to make an appearance, overpowering the party and revealing that the Abbey had already gotten almost all they needed to awaken Innominat. They didn't need a certain amount of malevolence, they needed a certain type, and Velvet holds the key to the final types. In addition to that dagger to Velvet's confidence comes another one to her heart in the physical form that Innominat takes, the form of Laphicet. This appearance, plus him calling Velvet sister, causes Velvet to go over the edge, slashing ineffectually at Innominat and then crying while hugging him, telling him that all she could do was avenge him, to which Laphicet eventually responds, "But Velvet, I never wanted you to avenge me." The plan from the beginning was for Innominat to suppress all emotion, to free humanity from anger, hate, and sin. As Innominat tries to devour them and complete the Abbey's plan, Laphicet the Malak, hereafter known as Fi, manages to save them by transporting them into an earth pulse. Unfortunately, Velvet's crisis of confidence will only get worse from here. When Fi wakes up in the earth pulse, Eleanor is there with him, and Velvet is gibbering. She snaps out of it and proceeds onward, saying that Laphicet was an illusion, a fake. Then Innominat starts presenting Velvet with memories which reveal the truth. Laphicet knew he was dying, and planned with Arthur how to do his sacrifice in order to bring on the Advent and eventually awaken Innominat to bring peace to the world. Each memory she sees only makes Velvet more unstable. Eventually, she is confronted with a monster which Velvet calls a disgusting monster and defeats. The dust clears and reveals the monster was none other than Velvet herself. Her self-hatred has never been more evident than in that moment. Then, Laphicet as Innominat appears again. With every sentence he speaks, Velvet falls further into despair. Exactly as he planned, now he can consume the final two malevolences, Velvet's hatred and her despair. She is saved by Fi grabbing onto her and refusing to let her get sucked in, and then Eisen grabbing onto Fi, saying, "Tell this self-absorbed idiot what she needs to hear." Fi lets Velvet have it, laying out her contradictions while showing her how much she means to him, and that he'll sacrifice whatever he can to keep her alive. She is not just a monster, and Fi loves her. Emotion defeats reason with regards to Fi's feelings for her, and it snaps Velvet out of her despair, depriving Innominat of the final ingredient. After a final moment with Ceres/Celica in the Earth Pulse, Velvet resolves to keep fighting, for herself and the people she cares about who still live. They then escape through a portal kept open in the Earth Pulse by Magulu. Velvet will take this fight to the very end by embracing her darkness, her contradictions, and her humanity. The name has been used before, but now Velvet uses it herself. She is the Lord of Calamity, and she's here to save the world. To combat the Empyrean and Innominat's influence, Velvet plans to awaken the other Empyreans, 4 powerful Malaks who can deprive Innominat of his immense power, or at least a portion of it. This will require the souls of people free of malevolence, pure souls, such as the Legates, Shigure and Melchior, or Oscar and Teresa, whose souls Velvet has already devoured. In order to wake up all the Empyreans at once, they travel up to the city of Mercio, next to the life pool located in the volcano of Mount Kilaros. To make a long journey short, they succeed, leaving only Artorius and a slightly weakened Innominat in their way for the final confrontation. Before their last clash, though, Velvet gives her final answer to Artorius' continual question, "Why do birds fly?" Her answer? Birds fly because they want to fly. Want being a desire, one that would be taken away in Artorius' perfect world. Then the fight begins. I wish I could do justice to the fight, but what's important about this fight is its inevitable conclusion. Velvet no longer has the despair needed, so instead Innominat goes for another being of despair, Artorius himself. Artorius then armatizes with Innominat. In the subsequent duel, Velvet manages to rip Innominat out of Artorius and then stab Arthur through the chest. Then, in a final act of sacrifice, Velvet embraces Innominat/Laphicet, allowing him to devour her as she devours him, achieving balance at the expense of a continued life. Velvet's theory that she talked about with Eleanor prior to all this, which was not a theory because that was too rational, proved correct, and the world is saved. The final victory of emotion over reason, and thus Velvet's story ends. Whew, that was a long journey. Here's then a brief overview of Velvet's journey. She goes from a caring young woman to a broken, self-hating monster with intense survivor's guilt and a strong desire for revenge. During her journey through the rest of the game, she then regains her humanity and kindness and eventually embraces her role as the villain in history while also being the savior of the world. As Arthur says at the end, spoken like a true hero. Because that's what Velvet is, the true hero. There are so many powerful aspects of Velvet, her caring heart, her self-hatred, her guilt, and her strength of character and purpose. Plus, she's a fun character to be around with excellent lines ranging from thought-provoking to funny. Through it all, though, she never loses touch of who she is and her humanity, because she is governed by emotion, and emotion is part of being human and being alive. Tales of Berseria is a story of many themes. Reason versus emotion, how people deal with trauma, and finding a reason to live. Velvet is the embodiment of all these themes, but the game itself does such a great job connecting them to all of the characters. I've chosen only a few of the characters to directly compare to Velvet in this video, but I could draw connections to the main themes of the game for pretty much all the main characters. For example, when it comes to trauma, Velvet sought revenge, Artorius went for numbness, Magilu hid behind levity, and the list goes on and on. For the character comparisons then, I want to focus on 3 characters and their relationships to Velvet as characters and plot devices or tropes. Fee, her humanity, Eleanor, the representation of her younger self and a foil, and Artorius, her other foil and the hero of a different story. Fee, or Laphicet, or Malak No. 2, is the reincarnation of Velvet's nephew, Celica and Arthur's unborn child. His purpose with regard to Velvet early on in the story was to be a conscience for her, and how she is treating him no differently than the Abbey has. This direct confrontation of her behavior in comparison to the Abbey's shows how far Velvet has fallen, and begins her climb back up to being a kind person again. As Fee becomes more and more like a person with free will after Velvet names him, it's another way for Velvet to atone for what happened to her brother Laphicet, to give Fee the adventure Laphie never got to have. It doesn't always go smoothly due to Velvet's intense emotional trauma, but enough of her kind self seeps through that Fee realizes who she really is, and that gives him the determination to save her at her moment of deepest despair. She also gives him the confidence to move on after her story ends and rebuild the world with the help of Eleanor and the others. Fee is the voice inside Velvet's head reminding her of her worth, her humanity, and her importance to the people in her life. Without Fee, Velvet never would have made it to the end of her journey. Then there is Eleanor, who, like Velvet, has gone through trauma and was trained in the art of reason by Artorius himself, along with combat. Like Velvet, the lessons never quite stuck with Eleanor because she is a highly emotional person, like Velvet was prior to Laphicet's death. Velvet and Eleanor learned the lessons, but never could quite give in entirely to Artorius' way of thinking because it clashed with their inherent selflessness. That led to Eleanor's disillusionment with the Abbey after the reveal of Artorius' intentions and actions, which also happened far more abruptly to Velvet. That's why I compare Eleanor to a younger Velvet, because their similarities are striking. Both confident, extremely caring, and driven young women fighting to protect the people they care about. Her arc, though, resembles more that of present-day Velvet, including taking on the role of the object of her hatred. Velvet did this when she killed Oscar in front of Teresa, and she became the person who killed a beloved brother in front of their sister. Eleanor did this when she wounded Mahina, causing Mahina to sacrifice herself to save Kamawana, which is exactly what Eleanor's mother did for her. Eleanor also works as a foil to highlight how Velvet changed following her great trauma in good and bad ways. Good, as in Velvet no longer treats Malak as tools like Eleanor initially does, and bad, as in Velvet's lashing out when her vulnerabilities are exposed, whereas Eleanor is calmer, although not any less dramatic. Eleanor has a similar but different story arc that Velvet could have traveled, but the real we're not so different comes with Artorius. As Artorius lies dying after Velvet stabs him, she remarks that if it had been she and Laphicet who died instead of Celica and Fee, Artorius would have done exactly what she had done. He would have been the hero of this story, but the loss of Celica and Fee was too much for him, and he wanted to lose his pain and despair by suppressing it. Despite disagreeing with his philosophy, Velvet used his teachings throughout the whole game to defeat exorcists, legates, and finally Artorius himself. Ultimately, Artorius was broken too much to be fixed, a state Velvet didn't quite reach, at least in part because when she almost succumbed to despair, Fee was there to save her. When Artorius was about to succumb to despair, though, he had Melchior there to encourage him along the path of reason over emotion, and that led to the final plan with Innominat. At the pivotal moment for each of them, Velvet followed the path of emotion and Artorius followed the path of reason. Both were fighting for peace, but opposing visions of it. One became the villain hero, and the other the hero villain. It could have very easily been the other way around, which is what makes Artorius a tragic villain. Velvet understands this, and that's why she mourns his death, even given its necessity. For Tales of Berseria to be the fantastic game and story it is, Velvet needed to be an exceptional character. She is certainly that. She's incredibly well written from the very start, showing the journey of her fall into darkness and rise back up to becoming an unheralded hero. She has amazing emotional moments, humorous moments, serious discussions, and everything in between. In a cast of standout characters, she is the lead and makes the characters, themes, and story of Tales of Berseria so meaningful. Credit to Christina V for her performance in the English dub, because she embraces all of those aspects and gives a magnificent performance. I hope you come out of this video with a greater appreciation for Velvet Crowe, and I hope that the Tales series can give another excellent cast of characters in Tales of Arise. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment below any thoughts on Tales of Berseria, Velvet, or this series. Subscribe to keep following the channel, and I hope to see you all next time. Do it, or I'll devour you. Have a great day, and happy gaming.